Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so excited for today's episode of Driving with Dave. We have a Nashville comedian and mom. Comedian, I like mom to put that in the credits so we don't piss off the moms listening. AJ Jacobs, how are you?
Hey Dave, how's it going?
Cheers, yes.
Got me some coffee.
How exciting. We're doing shades on a nice day here.
Yeah, I got the shades on. It's lovely here in Nashville.
Now
you're like a little nicer.
You're from upstate New York.
Yeah, Buffalo.
Which is why I liked you when I first met you, but you're not going to remember this, but I definitely pissed you off when I first met you. Do you remember at the wine bar? I remember
you saying nobody likes you here, and I was like, nobody's from here.
I don't even remember saying that.
That's why I remember you're like, well, I moved here I'm like part of the.
Oh, you know what? Oh, you know what it was?
About being part of the problem, but like I moved here also. I mean, I moved here in 2011, so I guess
I said that nobody lives in Los Angeles with babies.
Oh yeah.
And then you were like, my friend does. And I was like, no, they don't.
Yeah. I was like,
but then I was like, why am I picking fights with people?
That sounds like something I would say 100%. Because I wish I lived in LA, but I have a very practical husband, and we live here. We've lived here a long time. Both of our kids were born here.
What does practical mean?
So we used to live in Chicago, and we got pregnant in Chicago, and then moved here when I was like probably 5 months pregnant. And we lived in a second floor walk up one flight of stairs. We had a 2-bedroom apartment. I thought it was the Taj Mahal, and he could not imagine being in that apartment with a baby. He just can't imagine schlepping things up the stairs. And I was like, people do this all the time. But so here we are, and now we have a house and.
You live in such a cool part of town. I won't give it away, but this is where we've been coming for all of our cool food and yoga. This is a nice area. So where is he from?
He is from outside of Charlottesville, Virginia, the middle of nowhere. It's really beautiful. It's in the Blue Ridge Mountains. He's a Southerner. He really, he looked at me one day in Chicago and he said, we should move somewhere. And I was like, oh, let's move. I wanted to move to LA.
How did you guys meet?
He wanted somewhere warm. Oh, we met in Buffalo. We were both working on college campuses. I was working at University of Buffalo, and he was traveling around with his fraternity, and we met. And
this is old school then.
Oh yeah. We met in 2005.
You guys were in college still?
No, I was not in college. I was working. It was my job. I used to work with undergraduates.
So you groomed a college student.
No, he had already graduated. Also, he was working. We were both working professionals. We were, we met professionally.
And so were you both traveling when you met?
So I was living in Buffalo. He was traveling around, so he is from this beautiful place in Virginia. He went to school in North Carolina at Chapel Hill, which is also a beautiful place. And when he started working for his fraternity after graduation, they assigned him Syracuse, Rochester, Buffalo, Ohio, Cleveland, and Southern Michigan and Ontario.
Okay.
Great Lakes, which is not as pretty as it's Rust Belt. It's where I'm from. I love it. It's the Rust Belt. But he was just where am I?
Yeah,
but he met me.
Rust Belt is only pretty because it's rusty.
Right.
It's it's rusted so much it's now an antique.
You have to appreciate it. I will go to my grave. Buffalo is the greatest city on earth, and no one's moving there.
We have this town right next to my hometown in Rhode Island. The town's in Massachusetts called Fall River. Okay. And it's all old factory buildings that have since gone vacant after World War II and the Depression. But there were these beautiful buildings where all the textiles were made. And now finally, after being so disgusting and uninhabited and cracked windows, they've finally all been restored into nice condos.
Oh, that's cool.
So now it looks nice. But for a while, it was the shithole of New England.
Yeah, super depressing. Yeah, I mean, it's similar in a lot of these cities. And Buffalo is great, but we will never live there. We're pretty entrenched in our life here in Nashville. So
you decided, was Nashville a choice? Because just to relate, my wife and I got pregnant, and although by the way, when I say that, it pisses people off. She got pregnant. Shut up.
Well, you had to do. You had to. I
had a job there. But when I said we went in for our delivery, some people get really triggered by this. And I go, look. In my relationship, I think my wife enjoys that I'm taking ownership over this pregnancy and not saying, oh, you're pregnant, you bred, whatever. But anyway, we decided we needed to move somewhere because I wasn't worried about schlepping up a flight of stairs, but my landlord was attached to the wall. It was a duplex. And I was like, I'm not going to worry about my baby crying and wonder if my landlord's upset or, you know what I mean?
Oh, that's kind of it.
So I was like, we need to find a house in Nashville.
So we should move states.
Yeah, we should.
I don't want to keep my landlord up at night. Let's.
But literally, it was like, do we want to rent a home for $6,000 a month or buy a home for $6,000? I mean, like, those are the options.
Yeah, for sure.
And we chose Nashville.
Yeah. So, and was Nashville, like, were there other places, or were you guys like, no, Nashville, that's it?
I think in the fall, when we were months into the pregnancy, I said, look, let's knock Nashville off the, let's see it for a weekend. If you don't like it, then we at least know.
Had you guys been here before?
I had. Okay. Last year, I came here to do my friend Caitlin Bristow's podcast.
Okay.
And I had I don't want to call it like a spiritual awakening, but I was like, oh, this city's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The comedy scene was nice. The people were pretty nice. You could good vibes. And then, of course, once you do the, look up Zillow, you go, oh my gosh,
you're like,
I can own Nashville versus
the whole
living.
city.
Yeah, I mean, literally, I can get a chunk of my own, I can finally get a piece of the pie.
Yeah.
Which I know a lot of people don't like, but most people that live in California that are not from there, everyone's just been trying to get home ownership. The problem are the people that own 20 Airbnbs or whatever, not the people trying to get their first home.
Sure.
So whenever anyone says I'm part of the problem, I immediately go, I don't give a fuck. I stop. Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah, everything is problematic. So and it's not one. It's never one person, of course. So okay, so Nashville, you came here. You were like, this is the thing.
We put an offer in that weekend. My wife was like, oh yeah, she was like, I like it, and then her family's a 3 to 4 hour drive away, so her mom's been staying with us to help with the baby. That's awesome. So it got us close to family.
Okay.
It got us a bigger home to be running our businesses out of and all of that. And so it just made sense. But Chicago didn't make sense. And as far as like, Nashville was literally the only place that was going to get us to uproot. We actually looked at Jersey, but that's also like a kind of a high tax state, which I know you get a lot for your money there, but it just wasn't enough of a deal for us to move.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of like, my husband grew up, in the South. It's more mild, the climate. He, like, the winters in Chicago, he just, like, couldn't hack it. He was like, this is not cool. That's why I was like, oh, let's move to LA. The weather's so much better. But he, being practical, and he was starting a company. He started a business that he still owns. And Nashville's right in the middle. Like, I don't, if you've been back to California or going to New York, it's like 2 hours. It's not a crazy, there's no red eyes. It's like
great.
It's really not, it's very central. We
super
sound
close to the
so
East
old
Coast.
right now. Yeah. It's just easy to get a lot of places. And we were actually pretty broke when we moved here, but we should have bought literally all the houses because the housing prices have gone up, but whatever.
I know, isn't that crazy? It's
crazy, but we were able to get our one house, and that's been very nice for us. So
and how long ago was that? And that was when you were pregnant with your first, but you've got several, no?
No, just 2.
Oh, 2. Okay.
I mean, it might sound like a lot during comedy, all these kids, but
that's
just
enough.
It's just 2. Just 2. Yeah. We're 2 and done. He's had the vasectomy. I talk about that in my stand-up. I think it's great. We can get into that if you want. I don't know where you guys are.
What's the gender split with the kids?
I've got my son is the older one. He's 12. He's in 6th grade. And school ends here next week, so he's almost done with 6th grade, which is crazy to have a middle schooler. Oh my gosh, don't.
I know my audience is gonna be like, you have a 6th grader.
I have a 6th grader. He's 12. He's great. Oh my god, he's awesome. I think like a lot of parents are like, I want my kid to grow up and like be a doctor or be in tech. I'm like, I want my son to be a comedian. He's fucking hilarious.
Oh, cool.
Like, he's great. Can I swear?
You can do whatever you want.
And my daughter is 8 and a half, and she's finishing 2nd grade. So I've got one of each. They are, oh my goodness, I don't know. Our joke is that my daughter's going to teach my son about sex. Like, she's just very aware of the things, and my son's a little more innocent, or I think he's more innocent, but
funny.
But it's fun. Yeah, they're great. It's, it just gets more fun. And my husband and I we both have like our own lives and work and stuff. So, our kids are also our lives, but we definitely give them a lot of space to like, we're not helicopter parents is what I'm saying.
I wanted to ask you about getting into comedy, but also I wanted to talk about motherhood because, now that we're in the parenting game of, I think I'm like on day 11.
Yeah, I was going to say, how far in this are you?
I'm on day 11. My baby's 11 days old.
Oh, it's
now, let me be honest. I can't stop looking at him. He's the cute. Have you seen a photo of him?
Yes.
He's so cute.
He looks great.
He's
you
like,
guys did a good job.
It sounds wild, but like at 11 days old, he's starting to be like stronger. Like when he like cries and stretches out, and like he didn't have like at first he was like
every day it's like something new.
every day it's something
Every
new.
day is something new. Every day is something new.
And his eyeballs are looking at everything, and we're giving him, we're like trying not to mess this up, but we're not even worried about messing it up. And maybe that's naive of us, but I'm kind of like, look, I think we're good people. I think the baby's gonna be fine. I just want to have a goofy kid who's okay expressing himself, because I kind of felt a little throttled back with my upbringing as far as expressing myself. And that's kind of been my itch with comedy, is how can I become more of my source material? How can I get away from the restraints of society as they were placed on me? So what's your vibe as a mom, and what do you do as a mom that might be corrective of how you were mothered?
Oh, shit. You said you only have 30 minutes. We got 3 days. How many miles
do you get? I got a full charge.
You got a full charge. Great. Let's go. Hit 65. No. So,
raised in upstate New York.
Yeah.
What was it like?
Yeah, raised in Buffalo. I was born in 1981. I'm 43. I'm the middle child. I have an older sister and a younger brother. I had like a very not like, I was raised in the suburbs of Buffalo. We were like a first ring suburb. So the city was very accessible to me. My dad, his office was in the city of Buffalo. I say the city like it's New York, but it's Buffalo. And it was like, to me, I've always been a little bit of like an urbanite, I guess. Like I love going into cities. I love all the buildings and the hustle and the bustle. I grew up, I always felt like my brother and my sister would gang up on me a little bit. Like I was always the odd person out, and I always really tried to differentiate myself from my older sister. I loved being on stage. I'm like a total attention seeker. And I just was always like, I did theater and all that stuff. And I did, I played the flute and I played the piano and I used to sing and like flute. Whatever. Yeah, man, just toodle a toot, me and Lizzo. I
was a saxophonist. So like.
My son plays the saxophone.
Cool dude. I mean, flutes and saxophones have a common bond.
Yes.
They're kind of the ones a lot of times in band that you look across from each other. The flute gives you the wink and you kind of empty your spit valve at them. And
Oh my gosh.
Real sexy times in the band. Yeah.
I'm trying to think where he sits in relationship.
Ladybird Taco, that's a good spot.
Good stuff. Yeah, that's good stuff. That one just opened. So there's one on 10th over on the other side.
That's the one where I've been to.
Yeah. This one just opened, man, in probably the last month they opened their doors.
Yeah, good stuff.
Lots of tacos around here.
By the way, you know what I want to do? I want to buy a gas station like this and turn it into a podcasting studio.
Oh, okay.
That's all I want to do is buy an old gas station. I want to put a couple like Tesla superchargers out so people can make some money off of it. And I want to turn the inside into a content studio.
Okay.
That's just a goal of mine. I just saw that and I wanted to let you know.
You can live your dreams. Okay, live your dreams. You can do these kinds of things.
I'll have you in there one day. So anyway, so
I always did these things, but I think like no one ever said to me, oh yeah, you can do anything. You can be anything. It was like, no, you got to go to college. You got to get a job. No. So I think, and I always saw myself as not as talented as anyone else. And I didn't know how to like still do it on the side as a hobby. And I think my self-esteem started to dwindle a little bit, maybe like, a little, I don't know, depression. We didn't really like talk about that stuff in, the 90s. And everyone in Buffalo was depressed in the 90s. I don't know if you heard, but the Bills lost 4 Super Bowls
they did
in a row by like 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th grade. So like those are like very formative years.
Yeah, your fan base is known for jumping and crashing into tables.
Yes.
Many of which are lit on fire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's nothing can stop a Bills fan from doing something crazy. But like that, I was listening to a podcast, I think with like John Mulaney and Mike Birbiglia, and they were talking about how they grew up in like Boston and Chicago in the 90s with like the Celtics and the Bulls, and like you felt like that pride. And like, so imagine that, but like the opposite, where you just are always like, we're losers. Like, oh, second best is okay. And that just kind of like seeps into, so like, my husband's a Carolina fan and they win championships.
Oh, totally.
So like he's like, anytime I'm like, it's okay, you got second place, he's like, we are winners. And I'm like, that's right, we're winners.
And Buffalo just has
winning
like
mentality.
One sports team, really.
We have the Sabres, team. The hockey team, NHL, hello.
But that's
it's all we have.
Comedy's bred from pain, and you get a lot of like winters are a very easy indicator of pain. So any city that experiences winter usually has a little bit of pain, and you get strong fan bases. There's a reason why you don't have a strong fan base in Los Angeles, for the most part, because you can go to the beach and relax.
Yeah, or hike Grand Canyon.
Yeah, but you need that. You need the Buffalo Bills games.
Yes,
you need the Patriots games.
Every time they threaten to move the Bills, it's like a huge thing. People get crazy. So yeah, my upbringing, I went to, public school. I was like very involved in student council. I used to like win elections and stuff. But I was friends with everyone. I still have a lot of like friends from I went to my 20-year high school reunion.
What was your superlative? Were you the flirt? Were you
do you want to guess? I was not the flirt.
I was gonna. Well,
I was most talkative. And they gave us for the picture in the yearbook. It was 1999. We had like Zach Morris phones in our hands, literal. Yeah, I was voted most talkative. I was a chatty Cathy.
I never got the superlatives that I wanted, and I think that's why I do comedy.
What'd you get?
I never got and I'm not surprised. I never got there was very vain superlatives. You wanted best eyes, good look. You wanted all these things, and I don't even know if I got any, but the point is that I feel like I've always chased that validation I never got.
Yes.
Which is very sad to admit, but I'm brave enough to share that truth with you.
Yeah.
I feel robbed. Yeah. I feel robbed that I was never on the, I was always like first runner up, whatever,
Like you were like the Bills fan you were the Bills of your school.
Totally.
Yeah, so, I went to University of Buffalo. I wasn't like, I'm going to go look at every college and decide. Stayed local. I was a communication major. I partied a lot.
I was going to say, this sounds like this sounds like the party lifestyle, communications.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, what's the thing I can do so I can get the piece of paper with like the least amount of work?
Which, by the way, partying, I was social chair in a fraternity. And like, I wasn't even a heavy drinker. I always wanted keep my wits about me. But I think there's something to be learned about socializing in college. It's your first chance to really socialize outside of the bubble you grew up in.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that, a lot of kids were robbed of during the pandemic. And it's like, boy, college is not, there's a reason why we're not all going to DeVry University online. You got to be there in person, learning the dance of it all.
Yeah, and even though I was like not even probably 2 miles from the house where I grew up, I lived on campus. So I had a dorm, I had the whole experience.
Were you a tour guy?
No, I wish that's the kind of stuff I wish I had done. I studied abroad in college, but I ended up graduating early. I was just I was kind of over it. And I think part of it was because I did stay local and I was kind of ready for the next thing. And I really had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. So and then I ended up getting this job working on campus. So I didn't even leave for a while, but that job is what took me to Chicago. I had met my husband, but I moved to Chicago before we were officially together. And then we sort of stayed connected. And then one day it was I really like you. Do you like me? And then we got married, and then we knew we wanted to leave Chicago.
So you mean were you friends? Was it a friends thing?
Yes,
or
we were friends with benefits for 2 years before.
And what year? But how old were you at this point? Because if this is 23.
So we met in 2005, and then in 2007 we were so he says that the day he met me, he knew he was going to marry me.
Wow.
Yeah, he's I always joke that if it was just me without my husband, we'd have a missing limb, someone's ear would fall off, I'm all over the place. My husband's he's just he's incredibly grounded and knows himself very well, which is a really awesome person to be married to, because he's very he lets me do whatever I want in a way.
In any relationship, you need some stability, and then I'm sure he needs you to pull out of him maybe some free spirit.
Yeah. We just we go well together, I think. And so, so finally one day in 2007, he had come to visit me in Chicago, and I was like, are we just gonna be together or what? Because I was dating other people, and he's like, I've just been kind of waiting around for you, and I was like, oh.
Are we just gonna be together or what?
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck is this? I don't, you're in and out, And then pretty much after that, I think that was late 2007. We got married in the summer of 2009. So it was pretty quickly. He's pretty traditional. He's like, I want to ask your dad for permission to marry you. And I was like, my dad doesn't give a fuck who I marry. Not in a way that my dad doesn't care. My dad loves me, but my dad's also, he's you live your life, whatever you want to do. And so I was we should tell my parents together. We don't need to, you don't need to ask permission. I am an independent woman. Thank you very much. So
That's interesting because my wife was pretty much my first girlfriend because it was friends with benefits. Who are you seeing? I'm talking to this person. The ladies in my life that I was seeing, maybe it's one at a time, or maybe there's like, this girl and I, we call each other once a month. You know what I mean? Like there were those scenarios where it was both parties were fully knew what it was. And there were some instances where in the past where someone would go, I kind of really feel like I need a boyfriend, and I know that you're not going to be that kind of guy for me right now, and it just didn't work out.
Yeah.
And that I endorsed that style because it allowed other options to kind of like fall by the wayside and know, all right, this is the one I want to pursue.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, oh, we're dating because we hooked up. It's like, no, we're dating because this is the best option for us. And in like life, the more options you kind of go through, the more you realize like, oh, this is the one. So so you're saying he feels like he had that right away, and then you kind of like, was it a lack of communication that it just waited until?
He's so grounded in himself, and I think he knows the kind of person he's looking for. And I'm gonna just say it. I'm a pretty badass human being. I don't know that I could have said that like in my 30s, but in my 40s, I'm like, no, I'm a badass. I'm a fucking cool chick. So, and I think he like saw that in me. Probably, when someone sees something in you more than you even see that in yourself. And he definitely, I think, saw that in me. I think in my 20s, because I met him, I think I met him when I was like 24, 25. Like, so I just, back then, I don't think I had the self-worth and like the self-love to be like, oh, I'm worthy of being loved by someone else. I definitely was like sleeping around, dating people, but like always in a way that was like, this will never be a thing. So it felt like an easy out.
What does sleeping around mean? Like more other friends with benefits, or just,
just like,
if this guy wants to hook up,
booty calls or one night stands, or just things that I knew I was like, oh, I'm going to hook up with this person. I was like, it's funny that you said my husband didn't date a lot either. He had like a girlfriend in college, broke up with her, and like basically met me right after he's younger than me too. And
like I said, you groomed him.
Yeah. Exactly. I was like, but yeah, I just always did things that I knew would have an easy out,
That's it.
That it was like, this isn't, I'd be like, oh, this is going to be fun. And I'm a sexual being. I like having sex. Yeah. So, I was like, good, I'll get to sleep with someone, get a little, action, and then I can just like peace out. I never I never pursued anybody that I was like, oh, this is someone who's like, worthy of like more of my time.
Yeah.
And then like after a while, cause I was doing all of that while Colin, my husband, was like in and out of the picture. And then that day in 2007, I was like, this is ridiculous. Like I've gone to the buffet and I'm like, I just want to go to the nice restaurant now.
Yeah. That's exactly, like sleeping around is like short form rentals. It's like Airbnb. You're like you
gotta test drive a lot of cars.
You might not have come from a place where you found like a happy home. I'm not saying you personally, but like, so you're like, I'll just sleep around because there's just different options that aren't taking themselves too seriously. I think you and I actually have a lot in common, and I think my wife might have a lot in common with your husband in the sense that I think she was, once we started hooking up, she was like, make me your girlfriend. Like, what are you doing? I was like, oh yeah, of course. Would you be my girlfriend? Like, I wasn't even, I didn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
I was more likely to sleep with somebody than hold their hand.
Yeah. 100%.
Because like that holding your hands, like, whoa, back off. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Come on, we just got to know each other.
Yeah.
But yes, and I wonder, because Rhode Island in upstate in New York, I mean, the Northeast is all kind of very similar in I think the colloquial upbringing and lack of sex education,
right?
Lack of like. It's an interesting place, and it's not like traditional the way maybe the Midwest or South is.
Yeah. People, sex wasn't really talked about. I lost my virginity in high school, and started, we all started drinking. There was no social media. And
isn't that like, amazing, by the way?
Right, like we had camera. I mean, that's why like people every time like on social media, someone's like, post a picture of you from 10 years ago. I'm like, I don't even.
Yeah, I gotta go find a digital camera. I have to like go
to Buffalo and look through some drawers at my parents' house. Like, I'm so grateful that like a lot of my life is not documented. Not that I'm not proud of. I had a lot of fun, but like God, I don't need to see that.
You had a chance to make your mistakes.
Yeah, I made
to be you without a timestamp on it.
Yeah. And there was a lot of freedom in that, right? Like, I don't know, I grew up in this like very free, like, you'd bop around the neighborhood, or like you'd ride your bike to your friend's house and like steal from someone's parents' liquor cabinet and then bike home a little drunk and
put a little water in there, Jack Daniels, thinking you're gonna get away with it.
Yeah, it's so silly. And now I'm like, are my kids gonna do that? I don't even know. It's like, just getting to like parenthood. I'm like, I don't know. Yeah.
I want to use technology to help ensure my kids are pointed in the right direction, but not in a surveillance state kind of way.
Yeah.
Tesla has a new design they're doing for like kid mode, which means like, all right, you can use a car, but you're not going to go 100 miles an hour.
Oh,
you can go 74 and a 65, but like chill out. I'm not going to have you be killed because you're 17 and you don't know how to control that impulse.
Yeah. I love that you went right to cars. I like am not even like, I have a 12-year-old and like potentially he's going to drive in 4 years, but we like he's had an iPad for a while. We're like a little probably like extreme on screens. Like my kids do have screen time. Actually, we don't own a television.
Oh wow!
But we have a projector and we have the internet. So like, don't get excited out there.
But still, that's
like,
impressive.
Yeah, I mean, like the idea of my husband grew up without cable in the middle of nowhere. Oh, that's so interesting. And I grew up. I watched every TV show. Who's the Boss? Growing Pains, Full House, like all the shows.
Full House.
Oh man, yeah, Mr. Belvedere.
Big crushes on Stephanie Tanner.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, Kirk Cameron was,
There you go. And how'd he turn out?
Yeah, and then was it not Matt Damon, was who, there's someone very, I can't think of it. What's Eating Gilbert Grape? He's like very
Leo
famous.
DiCaprio.
Yeah, he was in Growing Pains, right? Or he was in, like he was like the
neighbor friend or something, right?
Yes, exactly. I
had a big crush back in the day on Gillian Anderson from X-Files. Which is a different definition, but now I get turned on whenever I see a trench coat. Okay. Which made Columbine really weird.
Yeah.
But so we didn't have many options back in the day.
Yeah. So my kids both have had iPads for like airplane rides and like car trips and stuff like that. But my son just got an Apple Watch at the end of 6th grade. Like we let him ride his bike in the neighborhood. I mean, maybe he is drinking. I don't know. Like I was, but we don't track him. We trust that we taught our kids to ride bikes. We live here in the city. And so knowing how to ride a bike is like really important to me because when I lived in Chicago, that was a main mode of transportation for me.
It gives your kids some freedom too.
Yeah. So, but a lot of kids like have been getting cell phones and had watches and devices like right away. But he goes to school not too far from where we live, and we just didn't feel like he does have friends who like take the city bus and like they transfer at the station downtown and go to their school. And that's a different situation if you're like doing that sort of thing. But the fact that he's here, we just were like, you know what, you don't need that. And then we did just give him an Apple Watch, and he's pretty pumped about that.
Well, an Apple Watch, you're not going to spend 7 hours on scrolling TikTok. Like, there's limitations to what you can do on it. And I'm definitely worried about screens and how we're going to approach that because I haven't seen a scenario where adults figure it out. As far as
we don't know.
Go. So why should we trust that kids are going to figure it out?
I mean, I hope like smoking and drinking, not that stops anybody, that they'll have some sort of like, and I think it's starting to happen. Here's when it's healthy to start using this stuff. But
yeah, it's almost like you can't teach your kid every situation that's right and wrong, but you can teach them maybe how to be critical thinkers so that they can navigate unique situations. Exactly.
And girls and boys are different. I already see like, girls in my daughter's 2nd grade class who have Apple Watches on, and I'm like, we're equal opportunity. So if my son didn't get the Apple Watch till 6th grade, like she's also, not gonna do that. So
turn this puppy around here.
Yeah, whatever you do.
I pulled into a wrong turn.
Yeah. So it's interesting what's going to happen.
Do you worry? Are you a worrier as a parent?
No, I am the leap, and I'm like, there's a parachute somewhere here, right? You did that thing. Yeah. I don't really worry about much in life. My husband is the worrier of the two of us. I'm always like, it's going to be fine. Like we moved here, we didn't know anyone. Like both of my family is still up in Buffalo for the most part, and his family's in Virginia. So we don't even have family nearby. We didn't know anybody. We just moved here pregnant. And so I think, looking back, I'm like, what? That was stupid. But, and I couldn't imagine like uprooting my life and doing that again, just because it's hard to make friends as an adult. It's hard to make friends with kids, isn't it? Like there's just so many moving parts.
Oh, if it weren't for stand-up, I wouldn't know anybody here.
Yeah.
But I kind of like, with comedy, you kind of just force yourself to meet people when you're on a show with somebody, which I wanted to get into.
Yeah.
So you you have this itch as a kid. You're in theater. You're playing the flout. You're a flautist. You're living the dream. Now you become a mom. Did you feel like as a mother you were putting your career on hold? Did you feel like you were putting your dreams on hold? And at what point did you decide to get into this creative pursuit of stand-up?
Yeah, so I think like, just backing up just a couple steps, like I went to college and I was like, okay, I have to get a job, I have to make money, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I started working on college campuses with undergraduate students, and I did that for a bit, and I really enjoyed it. But you always, I don't know, I think if you're a creative, you always feel like, but you're not pursuing that, or you're not having that like itch scratched. It's kind of always just like this like shadow nagging you. Like I think probably from the time I was 18 until I started doing stand-up, which was just a little over a year ago.
It's like the Grim Reaper.
There was like this thing on my shoulder, and
you were not doing what you should be doing.
Yeah, and I've had like great jobs and great opportunities. I ended up working in tech most of my 30s, but I was always goofing off at work too, and I'd like say things. And I actually had like a good friend of mine who was my boss for a while. He pulled me aside once and he was like, AJ, you can't keep doing that. Like people, and I was like, oh, not everybody thinks this is funny. Like this isn't like, work is not a joke. Like these people are, these engineers are creating things, and I'm like making fun of their bugs, and like, and I was like, oh, and so when I started doing, I'm like, oh, now I'm doing stand up. Now I can tell these jokes. Like my coworkers are not my audience. Like that's not, now that I was like, oh, there's a career for that. There's a way to do that. It's called stand up. Like it's not called Slack.
But what made you take that first jump into stand-up? Yeah,
well, I'll just back up to the motherhood thing. So I think I knew, especially after getting married, I wanted to be a parent, but we knew we were going to move here, and we were like, we'll move. And I had to leave my job in Chicago because I was working at a university, so I couldn't move that. And so I was like, I'll move, we'll get settled, I'll find a job, and then we'll get pregnant. It did not happen in that order. And so we moved here and I was pregnant, and I was like, I got to find a job as a pregnant person. So I was like, I got to like do the thing. Am I fat or pregnant? Like I would go out like in a suit and I would be like, can you tell I'm pregnant? Can you tell I'm pregnant?
And who's going to want to hire you if you're about to take maternity leave?
Yes. So I got a job at a nonprofit here. It's called Oasis Center. Look it up. They do incredible work in the city with like, underserved youth in so many areas, LGBTQ, and they have a mayor's youth council. They do stuff in high school with like international students and immigrants. They help students get into college. It's a really cool place. So I went for this job interview and I got hired. And then on my first day of work, I had to tell my sweet boss, who I'm still friends with, and he still runs the organization. I was like, hi, I'm pregnant. I'm due in a couple months, but don't worry. You won't know. And I literally worked up until the day that they were like, okay, and I had to get induced with my son. So,
wow.
They were like, the joke is where my office was like right across the street from all the medical corridor, and all the women I worked with were like, you're going to give birth in this office. We're going to walk you across the street. So I did get a little maternity leave, of course, back then, or I don't know, I hadn't been there long enough. I didn't even get paid, but I was grateful to have a job because I'm not like, that was around the time of like Sheryl Sandberg and like the, what was her, like, her whole thing was lean in. Do you remember that lean in movement? Did you ever get into that? Oh gosh. Okay. There was this thing they were telling women, lean into your careers. You can have it all. You can be a mom and have a career and no. The truth is, like, I don't know that, and I really bought into that. I was like, I'm doing it all. But then it's like, what is all? And like, I don't know. I think you can like navigate.
It should be an option to do it all, but not like that's your badge of honor.
Yeah, or like you're holding on. I used to hold on to my jobs like with an iron fit. Like I'd be like,
was it because that was like how you associated your success as a person?
I used to wear my career, like some of like my jobs as like a designer bag. I'd be like, well, I work for this company.
Sure,
it's like here's my LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
And then you kind of like shed that, or you realize what's important. And I got very fortunate. I had some really good luck in working for tech companies, and I worked for some great people. But I did when I had my daughter, I worked right through. Like wow. They had to take the laptop out of my hands when I was in labor. Like my doctor and my husband were like, you need to focus on pushing a baby out right now. And I was like, yeah. And no one around me ever put that was all me. Like I could have put my laptop down, but I was like, oh, I just want to get one more thing done.
Yeah.
And I have no regrets about that. And I worked remote. I started working remote in 2014. So like before COVID, before remote was like the rage. But and I think I'm not a baby person either. Your baby's adorable, by the way. So I was always like, okay, this is fun.
My wife was afraid.
My kids.
My wife had never like held a baby.
Yeah.
She was like afraid. So like I get that.
Yeah. And you're like, what do I do with this thing? So I liked having something else to do to like.
And like as a comedian, you want feedback, and like the babies give you no feedback.
No feedback, and you're like, I don't even know. Are they eating? You're breastfeeding. You're like, I don't know, something coming out of there. Like, you know, and the mental gymnastics. I think we talked about like pumping, and I used to travel to New York. Like, oh my gosh, and I would bring my pump and my cooler, and I'd have a Sharpie marker, and like, it was oh my god, it was nuts. But I mean, I have no regrets. I loved it. And I think as my kids got older, I was like, oh, I want to be here when they need me. I need a little bit more flexibility. So, you know, jobs change and but I, in early 2022, I actually was able to quit my job. And I was just like, I need a break. And so I like had a lot of time to like think. And my kids were old enough, they were in school. And I was like, when I'm on my deathbed, what am I going to regret doing? And I was like, I want to be on stage. Like at 41, 2, I don't know, however, I was like, how do I get on stage? And so I took a class at Third Coast Comedy Club, and I discovered stand-up, and I was like, oh, I'm going to do this. And I didn't look back. I started going to open mics. And
so it was the fear that you didn't have, was it a fear that you didn't have like, I don't know, something to show for? Or was it just you just didn't have a creative outlet? I had this, I'm an attention seeker, and I was like, my family can't always be my audience. My friends can't always be my audience. I was like, I can actually go and have an audience and like work. I don't write jokes. Like joke writing is like a craft. Yeah, and you usually don't know it until sometimes in a class you learn like, oh, there's a little bit of a blueprint to what appears on stage to just be chaotic.
Yeah,
like you see someone on stage and you're like, I don't know if this is planned. I don't know what about this is like legit or not. But a class, or when you study the structure, you start to see blueprints where otherwise an audience might have just been like, no, that person's funny.
Right, exactly. And just like all the work that, like anytime you see someone go on stage, there's even if it's just like at the Dive on a Thursday night, there's so much work that goes into what's behind that. And even if it's crowd work. Yeah.
There's still those years of like the brain, like you just the gears moving so that when something happens, you go, and you just can access it quicker. And that's the myelin, which is the enzyme that like makes your neurotransmitters faster. That's like what hardens the recall to be like zinging. So when someone's like, wow, you're so quick on stage, it's like, you should have seen me 10 years ago.
I mean, I wish. I'm like, when I look back, I'm like, man, I can't wait for 10 years. Like my 1 year anniversary, I did my first stand-up show, like real show showcase after level 2 on Mother's Day last year.
Oh, how
and
exciting.
so my joke is like, I birthed my comedy career. Like that's my, but my kids love it. My son thinks it's like the coolest thing. He's like, my mom's a comedian. And that's how I introduce myself now. I'm like, I'm a comedian.
Oh, nice.
And I really own it. Cause this is like, it's what I love it. If I could be out every night of the week, oh my goodness.
I thought it would be nice talking to you because there is this fear that I've had. And I project a lot of fears onto my wife, which I think is what people do in relationships.
I'm sure she loves it.
And I'm like, I'm afraid because she had to kind of quit her job early because she was a fit model. And like, that's based on your size. And so we moved. And so she doesn't have her LA representation and all of that. And I just like, my fear is that you might lose your identity because you're going to be so focused on raising the baby. And I want us both, and we are both focused on raising the baby, but I just want her to continue to soar. Yeah. So in talking to you as a mom who kind of raised your babies and is also now pursuing something new based on you know the pedigree and the path, like all the decisions you made up into this point. While it might be new to pursue stand-up, it's like you're doing it with all of your life experiences, which is really cool. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what I'm really, like I said, in my 40s, I'm just like when I said earlier, I'm like, I'm a fun person to be around. I couldn't have said that in my 30s. I was like, oh, I shouldn't say that about myself, but I'm proud of myself. Yeah. I'm like excited about the person I am and who I'm becoming. And, and I think like you can reinvent yourself or like, I don't know, take life by the balls. Can I say that? Sure.
Like, and just be like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm not going to be afraid to do that. And I think, but I also think like when you're a new parent, like sometimes that, especially when you did have a career, like you do have to allow yourself space to focus on that baby and to be like, oh, there's like a innate like maternal and paternal instinct to just like care for this person. And it's okay to like not do things for a long period of time because you are focused on this human being.
That's how, I was going to go to Why Not Saloon, which it's like, you get like 8 minutes of stage time. Yeah. They always give me more stage time, which is always nice.
I went to the a long time ago. I went to the show there once. But
and some people don't, I like that room because it's always like 8 people in it, and I can go in there and get on stage and talk and be goofy and not be like pressured to get my point across in a minute. And I was going to go Wednesday night, and I was like, my baby came home 1 week ago. I can take another week off.
You can. And Why Not's going to be there next week and the week after. And we're not, the comedy community is not going anywhere.
But it is interesting because I moved here just a few months ago and I wanted to like really hit the ground running. And in some ways I did, but also, the baby is important, obviously, for us. So I've kind of just been trying to still reprioritize. Like, I don't go to some of those mics where there's a big lottery and it's the cool kid club. I'm like, I've done a lot of that. Like, I'm just going to work on what brings me joy, which isn't necessarily the hang, but the actual performance.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing is, like, as a parent, I can't just like hang out at the East Room on a Tuesday. Like, I allow myself to go out 2 nights a week.
Oh, there you go.
You have to like set boundaries around it because
we should do a parent stand-up show.
We could totally. I mean, like, and there's a whole way to like work the system in a way. Like, people are like, oh, I haven't seen you, no. And I'm like, that's okay. Like, I'm here, and if you need me, like, I will. When I book shows, like, I'm very meticulous, and like, I will say I'm a crazy planner.
Good.
Like, I have a paper calendar. I use GCal, and like, I'm really meticulous with my time because your 2 greatest resources in life are time and money.
Yeah.
You never have enough, and if you can figure out a way to make one or both work for you, I mean, it really does unlock a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
So I say no to a lot, but I can say it with confidence because it's not like I'm just like, oh no, I'd rather sit at home and watch TV. But it's like, no, because my kids have an event that night, or I just want to be home one night and not have to like, because I will say, like, a lot of nights I'm cooking a full meal for my family, not because I'm like the stay-at-home mom or whatever, but like I put a cooked dinner on the table and then I head out at like 6:37. It's like, so it's intense.
It's got to be a lot. And it's got to be a lot, but that's why they say moms rule the world.
We do.
So congrats on pursuing this new world.
Thank you.
This new creative world, and it's been cool getting to know you.
Yeah.
How can people like support you?
I'm on Instagram. AJ Jacobs is my handle. And that's mostly where I post. I'm not really on TikTok. I have like a very old Twitter.
We're old millennials, right?
I barely make it on Instagram, but I try to post. Honestly, if you want to, you can always DM me, text me. I try to be very communicative. We
got a supportive audience of moms, so I'm sure they'll be happy to follow.
Yeah, if you're ever in Nashville, come see me, come talk to me. I love talking. I got most talkative in high school. There's my superlative, living it out.
And now you got a piece of it. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Dave. You're the best.
All right, AJ Jacobs, everybody.
Cheers.